Okay, Anna, we're good to go.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time this evening to have our brief coaches briefing for the pre-season. I hope everyone's season has got off to a wonderful start, and we are looking forward to seeing you and all of your athletes at the games. Our brief agenda for this evening, of course, we've already done our welcome and introductions. We'll go over the qualifier, just a reminder of the different events that are offered. Brief review of the rules. I think most of us are veterans for this competition. And then I'll turn it back over to Melissa regarding the registration forms and procedures. And then, of course, we will have time for any questions that you may have. You will also see a little control board to the right of your screen where you can type a question, and Melissa will be able to see those questions, and we will try to answer those questions at the appropriate pause through the webinar. And also there's the little icon to raise your hand, and Melissa will work as far as muting and unmuting the phones. Okay, our qualifier for the state competition will be held on May the 19th. We thank Frederick County for hosting the qualifier again for us at Urbana High School. Please remember, in order to qualify for your state competition, that you have to meet all training and registration requirements and deadlines that are presented to us from the state. As a reminder, in the past years, there have been a few exemptions requested for very extraordinary circumstances and situations. Please remember that those requests do not come to me directly. They do need to go through your area director to your regional sports director. Registration for the competition qualifier is due to me by May the 12th. I'm also asking if you could please CC Melissa Anger, our staff lead, so that she is getting those as well, because they are entered in by the state office. Please remember that we do need to comply with the copyright laws for the music that was introduced last year. And I keep saying this each year, but if by any chance anyone has the opportunity to, host a qualifier, I would be very happy to help you through that process. The events that we will offer, they are the same. There has been no changes. As you can see on your screen, individual skills, you have your beginner, intermediate, advanced, and elite. All of these groups are traditional and unified. The second event group that we have to offer is the POM division and the hip hop division. As a reminder, your athletes can compete in a total of 2 events, one from group 1 and one from group 2. Melissa, I will let you take this slide.
Okay, thank you. So as everyone can see, this is just a map of Towson and how we have everything set up for summer games. Nothing has changed. We will thankfully still be in the Towson Center on Friday. So everything will be the same as in the past with this map. It's just, we wanted to show it now that swimming is back on campus. So it is an updated map. That's the only change that's on here. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you. We'll just briefly go over a few of the competition rule reminders. I'm not going to read these verbatim. As I said, most of us have been doing this competition together for the last 10 years. We will have our 10th year celebration this year, which is very exciting. We used the cheerleading competition, of course, has adopted the safety and guideline rules developed by the National High School Federation and the USASF rules for the Special Needs Competition Division for the Elite Division only. And we also use the USASF rules for the Tiny, Mini, and Youth Division for our POM and Hip Hop. In the event that there is any contradiction between the rules, we will always go back to the Special Olympics Cheerleading Competition Guide and Rules. Just as a quick reminder, please make sure during competition day that a coach or an assistant coach is with your team at all times with supervision. Please make sure, I know our athletes get very excited, but please make sure that they're not practicing, any of their skills on any concrete or asphalt or other hard surfaces. It's very, very important that we keep everyone safe. If you please make sure to refer to your divisions regarding your minimum and maximum number of squad members on your team. And we just ask if you could please remind, individuals as they're walking around the competition area, to please, keep the integrity of the performance service. We are always very fortunate for the mats and things to be donated to us for our competition. And I ask that if you are wearing heels that day, to please remove them if you need to walk onto the performance surface. We're pretty good at this one, but just a quick reminder, coaches, you're not allowed on the floor once your routine begins. Your spotters are permitted on the competition surface, but, please remind them not to be giving any coaching or cues. For that, just as a reminder regarding our individuals that are assisting in the placement or moving of an athlete that may be utilizing a wheelchair or a walker during the competition, that they have to be registered. They need to be a Class A volunteer. And once they have assisted the athlete in their place, that they please stand with their hands at their sides and not to relay any verbal or physical cues. We also have what we determine as permanent spotters that are used for an athlete for safety. Again, this volunteer needs to be a Class A volunteer with Special Olympics. And there is no deductions for this particular permanent spotter for intervening to protect the athlete so that they would, if they were beginning to fall or something, but that's why they're there, to protect the athlete. So there is no deductions that would be taken. I do ask if you could do me a favor when you are sending your competitions rosters in, if you would please notate, if you know at that point who that permanent spotter may be. And please remember that we do require the proper spotting, and mandatory that you have a minimum of 2 spotters on the competition mat when you are stunting. For every stunt that you have, you should have a spotter. Basket tosses, as we know, are prohibited. There was a clarification that I wanted to make sure that everyone knew. This includes the sponge, also known as a load-in or a squishy, and all waist-level cradles are considered illegal. No partner stunt inversions are allowed. No perpendicular inversions are allowed either. Regarding jewelry, we know that it is prohibited in the divisions that you see listed. Jewelry is allowed as part of the uniform for the hip hop and tom division, but please bear in mind the safety of the athletes must always be considered. Small stud earrings in the lobes only, please. Chokers without anything that dangles. Please be mindful of your hair accessories. And jewelry such as a necklace, anything that's dangling, etc., are not allowed. And if they are found, there will be a 5-point deduction per occurrence. Please do not tape over any jewelry that an athlete may have on their body, with the exception of any medical alert type of bracelet or necklace. Tumbling skills remind that they need to remain in contact with the performance surface, with the exception of the elite division, which are able to do a round off and one back handspring. The elite division, just for clarification, which I believe everyone is fully aware, they are associated with an all-star gym that practices year-round with the different types of training, and that we follow the USASF rules for special needs competition. And for your unified division, that is both the makeup of traditional and unified partners. Please remember that at all times, you must have one more traditional athlete to unified partner. At any time that allotment would change, i.e., unfortunately, an athlete will not be able to participate. So now you have 6 athletes and 7 unified partners. You will need to remove a unified partner so that the ratio remains the same. Scoring remains the same. A squad or individual must score within 20% of the judge's maximum points. First place or gold is not guaranteed. You have to score within that margin. We will continue to have the official deduction violation sheet, which is a separate calculation. All 5 judge sheets are used only to break a tie. The highest and lowest scores are removed otherwise. Music copyright. I've just included all of the information that we included last year so that you'll have it as a reference again. But as of 2016, the U.S. Federations for Sports Cheerleading is not allowing music that is not properly purchased or documented. If you are using a recording that you've purchased from a vendor who provides the written confirmation for the license or the original composition, teams are going to need to submit proof of that with their team rosters. You are also allowed to purchase a song from Amazon or, oh goodness gracious, I believe you use iTunes and things like that. You are allowed to use them. Very minor edits only, like for an example, only using the first 30 seconds of it. Again, please make sure that you bring proof of purchase of that song that you're using and have that printed out with your rosters. This is a sample proof of license from Cheer Sound. I know a lot of the all-star teams use an organization such as this where they have music specifically made for their squad, and this is what the proof looks like. Hip hop division, really nothing has changed from the prior years. Just remember that your routine needs to begin on the performance surface. You cannot begin from the floor and then walk onto the mat. There aren't any airborne skills allowed, and you must involve hand support with at least one hand throughout the skill. For an example, a headstand. Tumbling skills, again, nothing airborne is allowed. And as far as your hip over head rotation skills, please make the only exception to that is forward and backward rolls are allowed. I will now turn this over to Melissa.
Thank you, Anna. Mike, are you still on the phone?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
So I'll let you talk about this.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. 1 second. I'm sorry. Killing a phone there. Before I get into this, I did want to acknowledge something I know Anna, in her humility, failed to mention. And I'm not sure. I can't check to see if Darian is on the call. Does not look like she's here. But Anna McCauley and Darian Packard, who's involved with the Joy Cheerleaders in Montgomery County, have both been asked to be involved with a nationwide committee that is looking at advancing the sport. And I'm not sure if Anna wants to talk a little more about that later. I don't want to steal that thunder, but I did want to acknowledge that here in Maryland with this program, we have two excellent coaches who are being nationally recognized for their expertise and their involvement, and we're pretty darn thrilled and excited about that. So congrats to Anna and Darian, and forgive me if there was anybody else who was also on that team from Maryland, but I did want to acknowledge those two. So that said, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight and taking your time out. We talk about this about no athlete or volunteer can participate in Special Olympics Maryland without a valid and current medical form or volunteer application. That is a nationwide requirement, and one of the things that we found recently, well, let's just say, folks need to be aware that this is an absolute, unquestionable requirement. There are absolutely no exceptions to this. There is no reasonable reason to not or to allow an athlete to participate without a current medical, or to allow a volunteer to participate without a current volunteer application. By doing so, you are putting you're putting the athlete potentially at risk from a health standpoint if they're not approved or it's not appropriate for them to participate in sports, but you're also putting yourself, your area program, and Special Olympics Maryland at risk from an insurance standpoint. So we're emphasizing this, and I will tell you right now that where we have been able to have some flexibility and some just some flexibility in terms of things that aren't turned in on time. From this point going forward, we're going to make the assumption and the interpretation that if the form is not in by the deadline that we are requesting it or requiring it, that you don't have the form. That athlete is participating without a medical, and the athlete or the volunteer in that case, in case of a volunteer, will not be permitted to either go to summer games, and also will have to instruct your area director to not have that individual participate in your program until it's rectified. There just is no possibility for any kind of leeway on that. And want to be sure that everyone is absolutely 100% clear. We talked with the area directors and area leaders on Monday night, and we'll talk about it again a little bit on Saturday when we convene in person. But this is critically important. If you walk away with nothing else tonight, I would right away contact the person in your area who handles the medicals. If you don't know who that is, contact your area director, and he or she can direct you and confirm that you've got all of the medicals for all of your athletes. And those medicals, as Melissa will show on the next slide, we have a deadline for training registration, and then there's a deadline to get forms in. Don't misconstrue that to imply that the athlete or the volunteer can be participating until that date without a valid medical or without a valid and up-to-date volunteer application. That is just some extra days to get the paperwork from your area to headquarters. But it is absolutely not a reason to be considering athletes or allow them to participate until that date. Many of you who know me know that I've been a coach, and even though I'm on staff now, I'm still a volunteer coach for track with Baltimore County. And every year, every season, there's usually one, maybe two athletes who we need to say for the first practice when they show up, and volunteers as well, although those are somewhat easy to resolve. But we have to tell the athlete, I'm sorry, you're going to have to sit and not participate in this practice because we don't have your medical. Of course, we make every effort ahead of time to let them know so that they can have that resolved. And hopefully your area is doing that and working with you to make that happen. But it's a tough thing to do, but to tell an athlete that they can't participate, but it is absolutely essential. Again, you are exposing the entire organization to unnecessary liability problems, and we absolutely cannot allow that. And again, there is absolutely no exception and no excuse to be allowing it. So that said, Melissa, I'll turn it back to you. I don't want to keep preaching on that, and I don't want that to detract also. It looks like Darian's on the line now. Darian, congratulations again to you and Anna for being part of the nationwide team that's looking at growing and moving cheerleading forward. Thanks again, and hope to see you all sometime during the season. I'm going to go ahead and mute again.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so as Mike talked about, these are the deadlines. All your area directors have received these. We wanted to make sure you receive them as well so that you are aware. The training deadline is the deadline to enter all the athletes into GMS. So even if they're not going to summer games or the required qualifier, if they come to one practice, they should be entered into training under cheerleading. Anyone that trains with your team, practices, trains, any sort of role should be entered into GMS by this date and by your area director or your GMS person will be entering these in, but you need to get these rosters to them before this date so they can have these entered in. Okay. The missing deadline form, as Mike mentioned, is on May 7th. So this is more, as Mike mentioned, as long as they have that valid medical, say they have it valid until May 20th, they need to get a new medical in by May 7th or volunteer application, whatever the issue may be. And it has to be valid through the end of summer games. May 12th, as Anna mentioned, all team rosters are due to me, and please make sure Anna is on that as well, so that teams can compete in the state tournament. I will be entering all the teams into GMS, so your area leadership will enter them into training. I will put them onto your specific teams. For example, I know Montgomery County has multiple teams. I will get a roster for each team, and I will enter them into that specific team prior to the required qualifier. Send out a copy of the roster from GMS just for the coaches to confirm that I have all the correct information and make sure I put all the athletes on the correct team or unified partners so that we can be set for the season. The competition deadline is on May 24th, and that is, again, this is pretty much for me to enter them into GMS, but this is also the date that I would need any scratches from you for those that will not be participating or competing in the summer games. This does not mean that those athletes or partners can't still practice. The competition deadline is for those competing in summer games. This is pretty much the same thing I just said. Work with your area leadership to make sure everyone is in. I'm not going to read through these next couple of slides word for word. They're more visual, and for your information, I would suggest going through them in a little more detail yourself once I send out the slides tomorrow, so that you can just be acquainted with what is needed for each person. Coaches' requirements. So every coach must have a completed and submitted Class A volunteer application with the background check. They also must do protective behaviors. Now these are all head coaches and assistant coaches, so everyone must do this, as well as the concussion training. So all three of these are good for 3 years when you turn them in. So once you submit them to your area leadership, you'll be good for 3 years. Okay. The coaches sport specific training. Anna and I are working on getting a sport specific training set up. Once we have that information, I will send it out to you. There are some online options that I will get to later today or later in the slides, but just so everyone knows, all coaches must have the Class A background check and Class A volunteer application, protective behaviors, and concussion training, and the sport-specific coaches training. All unified partners and volunteers have to do the volunteer background and be a Class A volunteer, as well as protective behaviors. So if you have a unified team, all your unified partners must do the protective behaviors as well. Okay, that's a big thing. The concussion training, these are links to two separate links that you can go to, two separate websites that you can do the concussion training on. So you can decide which one you want to do. They're pretty much both the same information. It's just two different organizations running it. Please email the PDF certificate that you'll get at the end of the training once you've completed it to coaches@somd.org. We are not automatically notified once you complete this course. So please make sure you email the PDF certificate to this email address, coaches@somd.org, so that you can get credit for it. If you don't, we don't know that you didn't take it or that you took it. I would also suggest emailing it to your area director so that they have a record of it as well. And as I mentioned before, the concussion training is valid for 3 years. Protective behaviors, here's the link for it. Any volunteers, coaches, unified partners, anyone that's involved with the team must complete the protective behaviors and pass it. Passing means you get 100% on the quiz. If you don't, you can retake it, but you have to get 100% to pass. Once you have completed the course, send the certificate or a screenshot saying that you passed to Khadijah McIntyre. She is our registration coordinator, and then she will be able to update your GMS profile to show that you passed the protective behaviors. Again, I would also suggest sending it to your area directors so that they have a record of it as well. Okay, so these next couple of slides are going to be talking about medical forms, volunteer application. In the past, I believe it's been over a year now, we have a new medical form and new volunteer application, so I'm just going to go over those pretty quickly. Again, please look at these yourselves once these slides are sent out. Okay, so this is the first page of the new medical. It's pretty much all the same information as previous. It's just a new form. It has to be on this new form or we can't accept it. Just page 2. Again, I'm not going to go through each of these questions. I'm just showing these to you so that you're aware of what the new form looks like and you have a copy of that with you. Page 3, page 4. So this one, as it says, is only required if the athlete's doctor is referred to another medical before clearing him. So not everyone has to have this one. Please make sure it is, if needed, that it is there. And then this is the waiver that everyone must complete. As you all know, we have USA Games this coming summer. We have a delegation of, I think, 110 people from Maryland going as part of Team Maryland. And all those athletes had to get a brand new medical. So if one of your cheerleaders are going to team as part of Team Maryland, they turned in a new medical form. As long as they submitted this with it, then their medical is good from that date. So if it already expired, but they turned in a new one with Team Maryland, they must turn in this athlete participation waiver as well for that to be valid. Okay, and again, I'm not going to go through all this information about the volunteers and coaches. It's pretty much all the stuff that we've just talked about, but please, please, please be sure that you oversee all this. Going back to the medicals real fast, please make sure that every doctor or physician examiner that is filling out the form provides their license number. That's a big thing that is missed a lot, and that will get sent back to the area as an invalid medical until all that information is corrected. Okay. Volunteer application, same. We've condensed it from 3 pages to 2. Sorry. So you will see this is the first page. The second page is just the waivers that we've just condensed onto 1 page instead of having it 3 separate pages. Makes it a little bit easier for you guys to fill out. This is for coaches, volunteers, and unified partners. If you have a coach or unified partner or volunteer that is under the age of 18, they must complete the volunteer application that you just saw, both pages, as well as this student minor volunteer reference form. Okay, they must have all 3 forms for it to be a valid medical. If they are under the age of 18, they still have to complete this, but they won't be submitted to a background check. They do have to complete this and send all 3 forms in for it to be valid, or it's not going to work. On the volunteer applications, if you see, I'll go back real fast. We have where you must sign it. It has to be an actual signature. A lot of these forms are they're writable, so you can just fill it out on the computer. We need you to actually sign the forms, not a computer-generated signature. So it can't just be an italic, your name written in italics. It has to be printed out and signed with your actual signature. Okay, that's a very big thing, or it's not going to be accepted and it's going to have to come back. Okay, incident reports. Any incident needs to be sent and filled out on this form. Okay, this is the form. It's pretty self-explanatory. It all needs to be 100% completed and emailed to your area director, and then they will send it to Rhonda Garrison and your regional sports director most likely. But your area director must have a copy of this, no matter what it is, any kind of injury, any kind of incident. This form must be filled out, okay? And everything must be filled out to completely filled out, okay? Can't stress that enough. The sports certification, all coaches have to have a sport-specific coaches training, as well as a coaching Special Olympics athletes or some kind of general course, such as coaching principles or anything like that. Coaching Special Olympics athlete is the best one, I believe. But you have to also have the sport specific. As I mentioned earlier, we are working on some opportunities for an in-person training. Once I have information on that, either myself or Anna will send that out immediately so that you will have it We'll try to give you guys as much notice as we can. I suggest that you come to in-person training. Even if you got certified last year, you're more than welcome to come again and just recertify. Every time we have a new training and it's a new clinician, then you're going to learn new stuff, okay? It's always a great opportunity to just spruce up your coaching skills. Again, not going to just read through this, but this is where it mentions about the coaching Special Olympics athletes or the principles of coaching. This must be completed. One of these two must be completed as well as the sports specific. And this applies to all coaches, as head coaches, assistant coaches, anyone. Everyone must have a sports specific training. As I mentioned earlier, these are also online training via the ACEP website. These courses you do have to pay for. SOMD will reimburse up to $20. If it's anything over $20, you would talk to your area director, and most likely most area directors have reimbursed for the remaining amount, but you would have to speak with them about that. I can't say yes or no about that. You can see we have three cheerleading training. Sorry, there are 2 coaching youth cheerleading courses. One that's a PDF and one that's a book. From my understanding, and I don't know this 100%, but from my understanding, what I've heard from other coaches is if you do the book version, one is $10 more, but they mail you a book and you have to wait to get that book before you can take the class or the test. I mean, you can always take the test without the book, but you might not pass it without seeing what the actual information is. I would suggest the PDF version because they email that to you right away, and you just look over that as you're going through the test. And once that's complete, you send that to your area director, and they get it into us 100%. One thing I want to kind of go back to a little bit real quick is if you've already taken the Coaching Special Olympics Athletes course, if you take that, the coaching principles of coaching, or you can recertify with trainings like first aid and CPR. That can also, as long as you've taken the courses before, that will also count as a recertification and renew all of your certifications. Okay, so these are the regional sports directors, myself, Ron, Kendall, and Kristen. Kendall and Kristen are new. They started right before summer games last year. Most of you, I believe, have met them. Kendall was at cheerleading most of the day on Friday, so a lot of you probably met her already. If you have any questions, go to your area director, but you can also come to one of us as well. These are our emails and our cell phone numbers. Feel free to reach out to any of us at any time with any questions. Okay, if you have a question that you didn't want to write in there, but you want to raise your hand, now's the time, and we can answer anything that you may have a question about for the season. Okay, no one's raising their hand. Oh, we got one. Okay, hold on one second. All right, Sharon.
Hi. I just had a question concerning a warm-up room. Last year, the mats that were provided in the warm-up area were, it was very, very small, and our team could not fit on it, and then the panels were not taped together, and I thought that it was a safety hazard, and I was wondering if that has been addressed.
Hi, Sheriff. How are you? I am checking with Towson regarding additional mats that they may be able to provide us, as well as making sure that we have the tape to strap the mats down as well.
Thank you.
Hey, any other questions? No? Okay. If you think of any other questions, feel free to email myself, and or Anna, and we will do our best to get back to you as soon as we can with an answer. But any questions, please feel free to ask. Again, thank you guys for taking time out on this Thursday night to join us, and I am very excited to be the staff lead now for cheerleading. You see me at a couple of the required qualifiers helping out, but I'm very excited to be part of the cheer management team and trying to make the sport even better than it already is. So thank you guys for everything that you do, and I look forward to a great season. Everyone have a great night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, Melissa.